Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Laden Yuracek.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Kurt Haggestrom, and he is over at Synchron. He's the Chief Commercial Officer, which is something I hadn't really heard about before, but he's going to be coming on to tell us a little bit about the updates at Synchron. Tom Oxley was on almost exactly 2 years ago in 2021, July, to tell us about what they're doing, but they've made a lot of progress since then and pretty exciting stuff. Kurt, a pleasure to have you on the show. Do you want to introduce yourself better than I just did?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kurt Haggestrom here, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at Synchron. And of those 2 years, I've been here a year, so I split that right in half. And I'm really excited to talk to you today. But again, a long legacy and background in medical devices. And again, I joined the Synchron team, which was about a year ago with Tom. And I knew Tom before, so it's been a pleasure so far, and we're excited where we're going.
Sounds good. Do you want to give a refresher on what Synchron does, the technology, and who it's for?
Yeah, absolutely. Synchron is developing, and we're calling it the Synchron Switch. So it is a endovascular brain-computer interface system. And this system will allow patients that are suffering from paralysis, whether it's ALS, whether it's spinal cord. The whole intent here is to allow them to connect into the digital world, whether it's banking, whether it's communication, whether it's using a smartphone or a computer. For folks that don't have that ability for their upper limbs to be able to control the digital world, which we all take for granted today, to have access to the digital world and the smart world, these folks don't have that. And so that's our goal, is to develop a system that allows it connected using their brain, actually.
Yeah, very cool. And the technology is pretty cool. You basically, almost like a stent, you put it into the brain, but you don't have to pop off the skull. You can do it the way stents are done in the heart or something like this, just go through a vein in the femoral artery in the leg, or how is it?
Yeah, great question. And that was really what attracted me to the company, and what Tom was doing was, again, you're right, this is a stent that actually goes up through the jugular vein. So we access the jugular vein right in the neck to be able to take the highways of the vasculature up into the brain without having to open the skull and without having to put, say, the needles or anything on the brain itself. And so the beauty of this approach is that the blood vessels are an amazing place to be able to put implants, and we're leveraging really decades of science and medical devices and, say, the coronary space and the heart space, that we know that these type of materials heal very well within the vasculature. And it's a very novel approach and really scalable, because there's a lot of physicians that can do this type of procedure.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. So what are some updates in the last 2 years? What are some exciting news that come out of Synchron?
Yeah, we're really excited. We're in a phase right now called an early feasibility trial. And we did about 4 patients implanted in Australia. That was a part of our switch trial. We're now moved on to the United States, which is our early feasibility trial. It's really a safety trial. And this is another additional 6 patients working with the FDA as it relates to the safety profile of the implants. We're 5 patients implanted. We're still looking for our 6th patient to implant. And so this is a very exciting time for us. We're almost wrapped up this early feasibility trial, which will then hopefully lead into our pivotal trial, which will be the bigger trial where we'll look at both efficacy and safety, and then will be hopefully great results there, and then move on to the market itself and commercialization. So that's where we're at from a kind of a development standpoint, but we're also excited with our last round of funding, Series C funding that was led by Arch Ventures, and also both Bezos Group and Bill Gates Group. We're also joined the funding on that. And we're well funded to get into that big next milestone for us, into the pivotal trial, and the development is going well so far.
Yeah, that's exciting. Okay, we can switch a little bit to the personal side of things. I had never really heard of a Chief Commercial Officer. So what is this, and why is it necessary, especially for a company like Synchron, which isn't commercial right yet?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that I think get asked a lot. One, it's just not always a common role within an organization, right? Especially one this early. When you think commercialization, hey, we're years away from commercialization, really. But I think the real purpose, one, my background, I have engineering, so certainly I'm rolling up my sleeves and helping to design and develop the product itself, and working with some of the surgeons, especially on the surgical portion of it. But really a key part of, I think, these type of novel technologies is to think about how do people afford this when it does get to market. And with the patients that we're focused on today, many of them use Medicare to be able to afford any technologies. And it's critical that we think about our partnership in working with CMS and to make reimbursement possible for these type of technologies. Thinking about this earlier on in the stage in the clinical phase really helps accelerate the affordability of these type of technologies when you do hit the market. And so bringing somebody like myself in that have experience in this world, and again, launching these type of technologies, I think looking at it earlier upstream, I think is critical as we look at these type of technologies.
And now, a word from our sponsor. CEITEC Nano provides custom solutions for neural interface hardware design, development, fabrication, and testing. CEITEC Nano specializes in microfabrication in parylene and polyimide, thin film ceramics, and conducting polymers. If you need custom neural interface hardware made with quality at an affordable price, you should contact CEITEC Nano in the heart of Central Europe in Brno, Czech Republic. Now, back to the show. Yeah, for sure. I've heard actually that like FDA approval in the grand scheme of things is actually easier than getting reimbursement approval. Insurance companies don't want to open their wallets if they don't have to. And yeah, so being able to collect 2 data points or getting higher quality data in the beginning prevents you from having to go back and ultimately saves you money.
Exactly
It's
right. Yeah.
pretty smart. Yeah. So personally, like, how did you get into this? You mentioned a engineering background, and then now you're a commercial officer, chief commercial officer. So how did this happen? What's your story arc?
Yeah, I've been in the medical device space for over 20 years, and it's really mostly a lot of it's been in this endovascular medicine. So I've seen the evolution of open surgery, whether it's from the vascular side, whether it's the cardiac world, cardiovascular surgery, everything's starting to go minimally invasive. Now they're even putting in valves with a minimally invasive approach. And so I've been in this minimally invasive endovascular medicine my entire career. And again, it's just a transition from designing, inventing products and then selling those same products, and then working my way up into the business side of companies, some of the big companies out there. So you get to learn from the best of the best in how to manage and how to run a company and really how to bring these class 3 medical devices globally. And when I started talking to Tom, again, I was introduced to him back in probably 2014. We were doing a talk at a small neurovascular meeting, and he was showing us early research, and I was talking about a novel technology we were commercializing in region. And I was intrigued by his approach, intrigued by where he was going, intrigued by really taking a field that has been around for a long time, BCIs, in this research, and now molding it with the world that I knew very well. And that's kind of the endovascular medicine and small catheters and be able to navigate the highways of the body. And I kept up with him. And then all of a sudden we met up again about a year ago. And I was talking about, again, the need for reimbursement and thinking and how do we bring this to market. And it was an easy yes for me to say, hey, let's join the Synchron team and really start to, again, be on that front edge of innovation. And I think this is, as I'm sure you agree, that this is a whole new field and that I think has a lot of potential for application.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, this is a brand new field. There's only a handful of companies that have done something similar to this, brain-computer interface companies, and reimbursement for that is a wild west. It's a wild frontier. So how are you navigating that? And how are you, I don't know, what are your goals with this, or what's a blueprint for this?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think there is no blueprint. So as you go, we're learning. And I think one of the key things as you look at reimbursement is to have the discussions early. Understand and working with CMS and the folks there to what are their expectations? What are the FDA's expectations? And so I think starting to have those conversations earlier than not, I think is critical. And then also looking at working with the societies, the medical societies, and understanding what impacts their patients. What is that those health metrics that are needed that we need to be tracking in the pivotal study. So it's really a holistic approach as you start to, like you said, develop the reimbursement blueprint. That's critical that you start to think about this years ahead of actually conducting some trials where you start to collect data as evidence of provided benefit.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're still many years away from commercialization. What's a timeline for this? What are you expecting, or when can people who are locked in or somehow unable to use their upper body going to be able to tweet?
Yeah, exactly. Great question. And it all depends on, again, how the trial goes and how FDA looks at this and CMS and things of the sort. But this is a medical device. This is a class 3 medical device. And so when you look at the trajectory of a class 3 medical device in our space, as complex as the system is. I think it goes along the same track of needing to have the safety follow-up that's needed and having the number of patients that's needed. I mean, both of those are still, I think, in question, but I think if you look at other predicate devices out in the market, that class 3 medical devices where they have to have a year follow-up for safety, and it takes a year to enroll patients depending on the number of patients. And so we're definitely still a couple of years out before we hit market, just knowing that we're regulated with the FDA. So we're working with the FDA to get this to market, and there's really no shortcuts from that standpoint.
Okay. And then you mentioned this would be used for potentially accessing bank account information. And then you're also working with the Gates Foundation, who is known for putting 5G vaccinations in the body. For whether they be real or perceived risks, what are, some security protocols that you're putting into place, and how can people who are implanted be protected? Is this something that you guys are thinking about?
Oh yeah, without question. I think the learnings of this space in the digital world will continually evolve. I think we're from the folks that the phone's listening, or you're wearing your smartwatch, and what's the data being used for. And so I think along those same themes, when it comes to protected health information, when it comes to HIPAA, all those things, ensuring that we bring these discussions on early. We're learning, we're evolving, we're part of these discussions, working with folks on the neuroethical side, such as Nita Farani. I know Tom's spoken to her. So making sure that we're really making sure that we're taking in the concerns of the public as it relates to information, and making sure that we have the right cybersecurity steps in place and the right protocols in place to ensure that we protect all information for these patients. But when you think about it, it's really an evolution of again, we have our phones in front of us, we have our smartwatches. And when you think of a BCI, it's really just another connection to the biological and the mindset of the human in the electronic world, the digital world. I think it's just a natural evolution for humanity. But again, it doesn't come without us not being cautious about it, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, wow, this is going to be a completely new thing. But kind of what you suggested is it's just not like a completely new thing. It's more of it. It's like a multiplier, and it's not like we're at zero right now, because when you multiply times zero, it's zero. But yeah, it is already somewhere. I think it's pretty exciting. What are some of your biggest challenges nowadays?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is the patients that we're trying to serve. And when you think of a locked-in patient, and I had really the honor and pleasure, I spent about 4 hours with one of our patients the other day, just seeing him use the system, which it literally energized me and made myself to have even that much more of a mission-driven kind of life and feeling around this, is that these patients really struggle, and it's a real challenge, and they have these amazing minds that just want to express themselves and be able to communicate, be able to do their daily activities and not feel as burdensome as they sometimes are because of their physical challenges. But that's really one of the biggest things. These patients are really challenged, and you can imagine everything from breathing to speaking to movement. And then from not only the patient's perspective, but that burden that it puts on the caregivers, which oftentimes is their family members. So their family members are now having to change their entire lives to be able to care for their loved one. And that's life-changing. And I think any way that we can help and assist and provide, again, a level of improvement in that life and the autonomy that will provide not only the caregivers, but also the patient back to their lives and dignity is really where we're all about. But it's a real challenge, because these patients are really challenged.
So what level of unlocking is possible? You said they're locked in, so they really can't do anything. Do they go to typing 100 words a minute? And how do you guys measure that?
Yeah, one of the things that, as you look at these brain-computer interfaces, and how do you measure performance, right? And I think that's a really good question. And you look at, how do you compare one brain-computer interface to the other? Is it obviously safety is the first and foremost, right? Making sure that, is this a safe device to put in a patient? How long can it be put in the patient? How long can you actually keep this ability for? And I think that's another critical piece too, is that you don't want to providing a benefit or a sense of an ability for a patient for a short-term period, whether it's a year or 6 months. That's tough to think about, versus you can use this for as long as you need it. And I think it's going to be robust and durable for that period. So I think there's an element of measurement that we need to keep track of from the longevity standpoint. And then when you look at, say, speed of communication or things like that, I think it's really about how quickly and accurately can you transition from the motor intent signal out to a digital motor output? And those type of things are, again, we think about the intent of moving our fingers or moving our arm. So what does that speed look like? And how do you think about that? And so that's really where we're starting to focus and understand is what is that right metric that involves from motor intent out to that kind of motor output factor. And I think you're also going to see these systems start to get faster and faster when you look at machine learning or the LLMs and other means in the digital world that's already moving for us, right? Everything's moving quickly in the outside world other than the medical device world. So I think being able to capitalize on these different platforms and software that allows for fast typing or word recognition and things of the sort that these type of systems will be able to capitalize on. So I think, again, trying to get to the most basic element of measurement, I think is key. And that's what we're trying to do, as well as I think the longevity is another important factor.
Yeah, definitely. And you had mentioned a study in the beginning in Australia with 5 patients. How many patients do you guys have so far? Or is this something that's under wraps?
No, there's 4 patients that were studied in the Switch trial. Those results were just published in January in JAMA Neurology. So you can see that kind of what the patients did and really the safety profile of the system itself. We've now, in the early feasibility trial, we've implanted 5 patients in the US. So it's a total of 9 patients total for the system itself. And so we're still looking for our 6th patient here in the States at those 3 centers I mentioned. So
okay. Yeah, and it's sounding like it's a bit hard to recruit because you have to find a specific type of patient and they need to be locked in and not have function of their upper limb, but also have other abilities. And is this something that would be an issue? How big is the target market? Is this going to be big enough? And is it going to be, is it going to be big enough for you guys to be profitable? And is it something that is going to bring neurotechnology and Stentrode onto the radar of most people?
Yeah, excellent question. And so when you look at the severe locked-in patient, I think that's very different than the market that you look at people that have upper limb paralysis and they can't use their hands, for instance. And you go from everywhere from a locked-in stroke patient or late-stage ALS to somebody that has rheumatoid arthritis that just literally can't use their, say, digital environment or can't use their hands anymore. So there's a big spectrum, I think, of folks that can't use their upper limbs and can't use their hands. And so I think the market is pretty substantial from that standpoint. So again, it's not just say a locked-in patient. You have spinal cord injury patients, right? They're not necessarily locked in. It could be from the head up and still speaking and things. I think the market here is, I think, strong. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited that I think from that standpoint, when you look at investors or this being a commercial viable product, I think absolutely that this becomes a tool that's going to be utilized by quite a bit of patients. Not only, I think, in the US, you think globally is a whole nother untapped market, but our focus today is in the US just to be able to learn and keep it centralized, especially on the learning side of it, and obviously efficiency in our funds right now too, keeping it local. But we're excited. I think this technology has a big application for many patients and also global patients as well.
Does it have potential to be used for other applications as well?
So besides the brain-computer interface platform?
I guess besides locked-in patients.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think if you think of traditional locked-in patients, they're not verbal, they can't communicate, they can't move at all. But if you think of we have a part of our trial actually includes ALS patients that have just paralysis in upper limbs, so they can actually walk. And they can walk and they can talk and they just don't have that. It's called man in the barrel syndrome. And that's approved within our study to have those patients in. So again, this patient would be walking and talking and they just can't use their upper limbs that would still be eligible for this system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool. I think it's exciting stuff. I'm going to be obviously following you guys and hopefully you guys can come on in another 2 years to give us more updates and hopefully good news. Kurt, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, no, I think I just appreciate you having me on today. And I think just for me to emphasize that, again, this is a medical device. We're trying to develop a product for patients. We're still enrolling in our trials in New York here and in Pittsburgh. Certainly you can go out to our website and connect and see if anybody knows of anybody that may be a candidate. We certainly can look at them as a potential candidate. But we're excited of the future and the impact this will have for patients. Again, appreciate your having me on today.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.